The first ships from Earth appeared above the fragile alien world like shadows moving against the stars. Their shapes were unlike anything the people of that world had ever seen. The vessels were not smooth or elegant, like the fleets of the older empires. Instead, they looked heavy with sharp angles and layers of armor. Some of the alien leaders whispered that they looked more like floating fortresses than ships. The people gathered in their cities, pointing to the skies. Fear and hope fought inside them. For weeks they had waited for a sign, and now something had come, but what was it? Were these strangers saviors, or were they here to take advantage of weakness? No one knew. The alien council held a meeting as soon as the human fleet appeared in orbit. The council chamber was filled with voices, some shouting with excitement, others trembling with fear. Some leaders said they should welcome the newcomers with open arms. Others argued they should remain silent, fearing that these strangers might be worse than the Empire already threatening them. Far above the planet, on the human flagship, the atmosphere was different. The humans were calm, steady, and quiet. They studied the planet's defenses, or rather its lack of defenses. Their scanners showed outdated weapons, weak shields, and desperate populations fleeing from destroyed colonies. The humans saw at once that this civilization had been left behind by the larger galaxy, too weak to protect itself. But the humans also noticed something else. The distress signal had not been a trick. It had not been bait for an ambush. It was real. The voice that had reached Earth was filled with honest fear, and that honesty touched the hearts of the human crew. They knew what it was like to cry for help and hear only silence. They would not let this world fall. The first contact came through communication channels. The fragile aliens held their breath as the strange voices of the humans came through their speakers. The words were translated by machines, but the tone was unmistakable. Steady, strong, and direct. The humans said they had heard the call for help. They said they had come to stand against the empire that threatened to destroy them. At first, the aliens could not believe it. Why would anyone travel across the stars to defend a world they had never seen? Why would strangers risk their lives for people they did not know? In their galaxy, such kindness was rare. Most powers only helped if there was profit. Many leaders whispered that the humans must want something in return: resources, land, or perhaps control over their world. But as the humans continued to speak, there was something in their words that silenced those doubts. It was not the promise of riches or conquest. It was something deeper: the promise of solidarity. The humans said they knew what it meant to fight against stronger enemies. They knew what it meant to feel small in the face of overwhelming power. They said no one deserved to be destroyed simply because they were weak. This message spread across the fragile world. Citizens crowded around screens and radios, listening to the human voices. Some wept with relief. Others cheered in the streets. For the first time in months, hope returned to their hearts. Still, not everyone was convinced. In the quiet corners of the council chamber, some leaders continued to whisper doubts. They had heard rumors, stories from distant traders about Earth. The galaxy called humans Deathworlders. Their home planet was said to be one of the most dangerous in the known universe, filled with storms, predators, and challenges that would kill most other species within days. How could anyone from such a place be trusted? Were they protectors or monsters wearing the mask of allies? The humans did not deny their reputation. In fact, when questioned about their world, they spoke openly. They told the aliens that Earth was harsh, but that harshness had shaped them. It had taught them to fight, to endure, and to adapt. They admitted they were not gentle by nature. But they also said that those same qualities made them fierce defenders of life. While the council debated, the hostile empire made its next move. Scouts from the empire entered the system, scanning the planet and preparing for another strike. The fragile world panicked, fearing the worst. But this time things were different. The human fleet moved. When the Empire's ships approached, expecting an easy victory, they were met by fire unlike anything they had faced before. The humans did not wait for the enemy to attack first. They launched their own strike, precise and merciless. Their weapons cut through the Empire's ships with brutal efficiency. The fragile aliens watching from the surface gasped in disbelief. The battle was over in minutes. The Empire's scouts were destroyed, and the human fleet stood untouched, for the fragile world. It was the first time they had seen victory in months. For the Empire, it was the first time they had been stopped so quickly. After the battle, the humans did not celebrate. They returned to orbit, repaired their ships, and prepared for the next fight. To them, this was only the beginning. But for the fragile aliens, it was proof that these strange beings might truly be their salvation. Still, the doubts did not vanish. In private, the alien leaders discussed the strange way the humans fought. They had attacked with a ferocity that was almost frightening. There was no hesitation, no mercy for their enemies. It was as though they had been born for war. Some leaders worried that once the Empire was gone, the humans might turn that same ferocity on them. Others argued that the humans had shown restraint, striking only at the Empire's ships and leaving the planet untouched. On the streets, the common people had no such doubts. To them, the humans were heroes. Children shouted their names. Families offered prayers of thanks. Artists painted murals of the heavy, fortress-like ships that now guarded their skies. In the days that followed, small groups of humans descended to the planet. Their arrival caused both wonder and fear. The humans were taller, stronger, and moved with a confidence that made others step back. Their eyes were sharp, filled with the kind of determination only survivors carried. But their actions spoke louder than their appearance. They brought medical supplies, repaired broken defenses, and helped the refugees who had fled the Empire's attacks. The fragile aliens watched closely. They expected arrogance or demands. Instead, they found that the humans listened carefully, worked hard, and treated even the weakest with respect. This confused them more than anything. How could such dangerous beings also be so compassionate? The Empire, however, was not silent. News of their defeat spread quickly. They gathered larger fleets, promising to crush both the fragile world and the humans who had dared to interfere. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Other civilizations heard that Earth's monsters had revealed themselves at last. Some were filled with fear. Others were curious. A few even felt hope. But on the fragile planet, the people only cared about one thing. When the Empire came back, they would not face it alone. The humans were there, and they were ready. The stage was set. A clash was coming, greater than anything the fragile world had seen before, and in the heart of it all stood humanity, the Death Worlders preparing to show the galaxy why Earth had survived when so many other worlds had fallen. The galaxy was wide and filled with countless stars, each carrying its own stories, its own people, its own struggles. But not every star was a place of peace. Some civilizations lived in fear, their homes threatened by stronger powers that ruled through cruelty. One such world, small and fragile, found itself at the edge of destruction. The people of this world had tried everything to defend themselves, but their ships were weak, their weapons outdated, and their leaders desperate. Each passing day brought more fear as the hostile empire grew closer. It was in this moment of hopelessness that the leaders of the fragile civilization made a choice. They would send out a call, a plea for help, across the galaxy. Their scientists worked day and night to build a beacon strong enough to carry the signal beyond their star system. They knew it was a risk. Anyone could hear the call. Friends might hear it, but so could enemies. Still, they had no other chance. With trembling hands and fading hope, they pressed the switch. The message was simple. It carried no pride, no clever words, only truth. We are under attack. We cannot survive. Please, if anyone hears us, we beg for help. The signal left the planet and cut through the dark sea of space. It traveled past bright suns, drifting asteroids, and sleeping moons. It crossed systems ruled by ancient empires, some who noticed, but chose to ignore. For what use was it to them if another weak world fell? It passed trading stations, pirate outposts, and forgotten colonies. And then, as if guided by fate, the message reached a world very few in the galaxy ever expected. That world was Earth. On Earth, the signal was picked up by deep space listening posts hidden far from the public eye. Humanity had been watching the stars for a long time, waiting for signs of life or for threats that might come from above. Scientists, soldiers, and leaders gathered quickly, studying the strange voice that came through the static. They listened, carefully playing the message again and again. It was clear, someone was asking for help. The people of Earth were not strangers to suffering. Their history was filled with wars, disasters, and challenges that had shaped them into survivors. For centuries they had fought against one another, against nature, against every hardship their dangerous planet could throw at them. Earth was not a gentle home. It was filled with storms, earthquakes, predators, and diseases. Yet somehow humanity had thrived. They had learned to fight back, to adapt, and to keep moving forward even when hope seemed lost. Now they were faced with a choice. They could ignore the call just as other civilizations in the galaxy had done, and continue their lives in silence. Or they could act. Acting meant risk, danger, and perhaps even war against unknown enemies. But it also meant living up to something deeper, humanity's stubborn refusal to let others suffer alone. The debate did not last long. On Earth, when people heard the words "we cannot survive," something stirred in their hearts. They remembered what it was like to face hopeless odds, and they could not turn away. So plans were drawn. Fleets were prepared. Soldiers, explorers, and specialists were gathered. Unlike the fragile aliens who had sent the call, humanity's ships were not elegant or beautiful. They were heavy, armored, and built for survival. Each carried scars of design learned through endless trial and error. Each was a weapon in its own right. Back on the fragile world, the people waited. Days turned into weeks, and their fear grew, heavier with every passing hour. The hostile empire had already taken some of their outer colonies. Refugees poured into their cities, bringing tales of burned homes and captured families. The leaders tried to keep order, but despair was spreading, like fire. Many began to whisper that no one had heard their call. Others believed that if anyone had, they simply did not care. Then something changed. Their skies lit up with strange signatures, ships unlike any they had ever seen before. The alien leaders rushed to their observation towers, their eyes wide, as massive vessels cut through the void above their world. The designs were strange, blocky, and intimidating. Nothing about them was graceful, yet everything about them spoke of purpose and strength. The fragile aliens whispered in disbelief. Someone had answered. But as the ships lowered into orbit, more questions arose. Who were these beings? Were they saviors or simply another danger? The aliens could not tell. Fear and hope battled within them as they prepared to meet these strangers face to face. On the flagship of the human fleet, men and women studied the planet below. Their faces were calm, but their eyes carried the weight of experience. They understood what it meant to be attacked, to feel helpless, to cry out and hear nothing in return. They had sworn not to let that happen to others if they could stop it. And so humanity, the so-called monsters of Earth, prepared to make their presence known to a galaxy that had long forgotten them. The fragile world did not know it yet, but their call had been answered by the most dangerous kind of ally imaginable. Not angels, not gentle protectors, but survivors from a death world. A people who had learned long ago that when darkness rose, you did not bow. You fought back with everything you had. The moment was quiet, filled with tension, like the pause before a storm. Across the galaxy, no one yet knew what had happened. But soon word would spread. Soon every empire, every world, and every ruler would hear the story. When the desperate call went out into the stars, it was Earth that answered. And with Earth came not peace, not soft promises, but the raw, unbreakable will of a species the galaxy would soon learn to fear, and perhaps to respect. The warning of the Empire's return spread like fire across the fragile alien world. Every citizen knew that their enemy would not accept defeat quietly. The Empire had lost scouts, but that loss was small compared to the full strength they could bring. The skies might be clear for now, but everyone understood it was only a pause before the storm. On Earth's ships in orbit, the humans prepared calmly. Their leaders held long discussions, studying every detail of the enemy. Maps of the system glowed in the air as officers pointed to possible attack routes. They knew the Empire would come with overwhelming numbers, confident that no one could stand against them. But humans had never measured survival by numbers alone. For them, survival had always been about strategy, creativity, and the willingness to endure when others would give up. The fragile alien leaders were invited to join these meetings. At first, they were overwhelmed. The humans spoke quickly using military terms that were difficult to translate, but slowly, the aliens began to understand. The humans were not planning a single battle. They were preparing for a long fight, one that would stretch their resources and test their courage. The aliens had never thought that way before. For them, war had always been about direct clashes. Whoever had the bigger fleet won. But the humans thought differently. They spoke of traps, diversions, hidden movements, and strategies that turned weakness into strength. They spoke as if war was not just about ships and weapons, but about the mind. Some alien leaders felt uneasy. The humans seemed almost too comfortable, discussing destruction. Their eyes lit up when they spoke of tactics as though this was a language they had spoken all their lives. And in truth it was. For humanity, conflict was not new. It was something their ancestors had faced for thousands of years. The galaxy might see them as monsters, but they were monsters forged by necessity. When the Empire's fleets finally appeared, the fragile world shook with fear. Their ships filled the skies, rows upon rows of glowing engines cutting through the void. It was a display of power meant to terrify, and for many, it worked. The fragile people hid in their homes, clutching their families, believing the end had come, but the humans did not tremble. They moved their ships into formation, calm and steady. From the planet's surface, citizens looked up and saw the human fleet standing between them and the invaders. For the first time, they felt what it was like to be defended by beings who would not run. The battle began with a roar of light and fire. The Empire struck first, their weapons flashing across the void. Energy beams tore through space, aiming to overwhelm the human defenses in a single strike. But the humans had been waiting. Their ships shifted, shields holding, and then they struck back. The difference in style was clear at once. The Empire relied on numbers and raw power. The humans relied on timing, precision, and creativity. Where the Empire expected their enemies to scatter, the humans closed ranks, absorbing the blows and striking with counterattacks. They used their smaller ships to dart in and out, targeting weak points that the Empire had not even considered vulnerable. The fragile aliens watched the battle unfold from their cities, stunned. They had never seen fighting like this before. The humans moved like predators, every strike measured, every maneuver part of a larger plan. The Empire's ships began to falter, their perfect lines breaking apart as the humans exploited every mistake. But the Empire did not back down. They sent wave after wave, determined to crush their enemies. The sky became a storm of fire. Human ships were damaged, some destroyed, but still they fought on. The fragile aliens held their breath, expecting the humans to retreat, but retreat never came. The humans fought with a determination that seemed almost unnatural, refusing to give up even when outnumbered. On the ground, human soldiers worked alongside the fragile people, preparing for the possibility of invasion. They trained the civilians, taught them how to build defenses, and encouraged them not to lose hope. Their voices were steady, their presence unshakable. To the fragile aliens, it was as if the humans carried a fire inside them that could not be put out. The Empire tried to break that fire. They launched attacks not only in space but against the planet itself. Bombardments rained down, shaking cities and destroying homes. The fragile people screamed and cried, believing they would be wiped out. But then, to their shock, human ships moved into the line of fire, absorbing the attacks meant for the planet. The cost was heavy. Some human ships burned, some broke apart. Yet the humans did not complain. They did not hesitate. They simply endured, holding their ground no matter what it cost. The fragile aliens began to understand something new. These beings were not fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting because they had chosen to stand between the weak and the strong. As the battle raged, whispers spread among the alien leaders. They spoke of the humans with awe and fear. Some called them saviors. Others called them mad. But all agreed on one thing. The humans were unlike any species they had ever seen. They fought not as soldiers bound by orders, but as survivors who refused to let death win. The Empire, used to easy victories, grew frustrated. Their commanders could not understand how this small group of Deathworlders resisted them. They had more ships, more weapons, more power. Yet every time they pressed forward, the humans pushed back harder. It was as though the humans thrived in the very chaos that broke others. In one critical moment, the Empire launched its largest attack, focusing all its fire on the human flagship. For a moment, it seemed the ship might break. Flames tore through its hull, alarms rang, and crew members scrambled. But the captain's voice came through, steady and unyielding. The ship held. The humans rallied, striking back with everything they had. The Empire's fleet staggered under the counterattack. The fragile aliens watching from the surface wept with relief. For the first time, they believed victory was possible. For the first time, they saw that their survival was not just a dream. But even in victory, fear lingered. The way the humans fought was terrifying. Their willingness to sacrifice, their refusal to surrender, their fierce strategies, it all seemed inhuman. To some, they looked less like allies and more like forces of nature, storms in human form. The title of monsters did not feel entirely wrong, yet those same monsters brought hope. They stood where no one else had, and they did not break. The fragile aliens began to see that perhaps monsters were exactly what they needed, beings strong enough to face the darkness and survive. When the battle ended, the Empire retreated, their fleet in ruins. The sky cleared, and silence fell across the world. The humans did not cheer. They did not raise banners or declare triumph. They simply repaired their ships, cared for their wounded, and prepared for the next fight. To them, survival was not about celebration. It was about readiness. The fragile aliens, however, could not stay silent. In their cities, people filled the streets singing, shouting, and praising the humans. Murals grew larger, songs grew louder, and for the first time in years, joy replaced fear. The humans had given them not only protection, but the belief that they could endure. Still, in the quiet halls of the council, leaders debated. Was it wise to trust beings so powerful, so strange, so dangerous? The humans had shown compassion, yes, but their methods were terrifying. Could they really be trusted in the long term? No one had the answer. But one truth could not be denied. The humans had turned the tide. And across the galaxy, word of their victory began to spread. Civilizations whispered in awe and fear, realizing that Earth's monsters were not legends. They were real, and they had stepped out of the shadows at last. The galaxy would never be the same. Even after the Empire had retreated, the fragile alien world remained on edge. Every night the stars seemed to hold a secret, as if a new danger could arrive at any moment. The people knew they had been saved for now, but survival had always taught them that peace was fragile. The humans, however, moved with a calm certainty. Their ships hovered in orbit, their crews repairing damage, restocking supplies, and running drills. They did not leave. Even though the immediate threat had passed, they stayed, teaching the aliens how to strengthen their defenses, how to prepare for future attacks, and how to think in ways they had never considered. The fragile aliens watched in amazement. Humanity's methods were unlike anything they had seen. The humans did not simply fight. They analyzed, planned, and adapted. They taught the aliens to build defenses that used the terrain, to set traps that could surprise an enemy even before it reached the cities, and to communicate in ways that kept their entire population informed without panic. Some alien leaders began to see the true nature of these humans. They were not just fighters. They were survivors. Every action they took was calculated. Every decision made to ensure the survival of the people they had chosen to protect. And yet, despite their skill and efficiency, the humans showed patience and understanding. They did not force the aliens to follow orders blindly. Instead, they taught, guided, and encouraged. Meanwhile, word of the humans' power spread through the galaxy. Other civilizations began to take notice. Traders, explorers, and even other empires whispered of Earth's monsters who had fought against the Empire and survived. Some were afraid, believing that if humans could do this for one world, they could do it for any world. Others were inspired, seeing that a species shaped by hardship could stand up to the greatest threats. Back on the fragile world, the humans continued their work. Soldiers trained alongside aliens, sharing techniques for survival and combat. Engineers worked to improve weapons, defenses, and communication systems. Even the children learned from them, picking up skills that would help the next generation. Survive in a dangerous galaxy, the fragile people began to change. Their fear turned into determination. They learned that survival was not just about hiding or begging for help. It was about preparation, courage, and unity. The humans had shown them what it meant to fight, not out of hatred or desire for power, but out of necessity to protect life. Yet, the humans did not just prepare for battle. They also taught the aliens how to heal, how to care for their people, and how to rebuild after destruction. They understood that survival was not only about strength, but also about compassion. Every act of defense, every lesson in strategy, was paired with guidance on how to care for the vulnerable, how to rebuild what was lost, and how to maintain hope even in the darkest times. The Empire, watching from afar, began to grow concerned. They had expected the fragile world to fall, expecting the humans to be merely an oddity that could be overwhelmed. But the humans were more than that. They were a force the Empire had not counted on, a species that combined intelligence, adaptability, and unyielding determination. Each day the humans became stronger, and the fragile aliens became capable allies under their guidance. The fragile world began to believe in themselves for the first time. They saw that they could fight, that they could endure, and that they could survive alongside the humans. But they also understood the cost. The humans had shown them the reality of war, the danger, the sacrifices, and the need for courage even when fear pressed in from every side. One day, a small fleet of scouts from the Empire approached the system. They were testing, trying to see if the humans had left any weakness behind. But the humans were ready. Every move, every position, every weapon was prepared in advance. When the Empire's scouts advanced, they found themselves trapped by clever strategies, ambushes, and defenses that seemed impossible to predict. Within hours, the scouts were destroyed, their ships scattered across space. The fragile aliens were amazed. They had thought they had learned much from the humans, but this was beyond anything they imagined. The humans had not only fought, they had outsmarted the enemy without risking unnecessary lives. They had combined intelligence, strategy, and courage in a way that the galaxy had never seen. It became clear to the fragile people that the humans were not simply fighters. They were teachers, guides, and protectors, capable of inspiring even the weakest to stand tall. And through this, a bond formed. The fragile aliens no longer saw the humans as strange and terrifying beings. They saw them as allies who had risked everything to help, and who continued to teach them the skills needed to survive in a hostile galaxy. Across the galaxy, whispers of this partnership began to spread. Empires reconsidered their strategies. Traders told stories of humans who fought like monsters but protected like angels, and small worlds held hope that perhaps, if they too called across the stars, the Death Worlders might answer. The fragile. Aliens finally understood something that humans had always known instinctively. Survival was not just about strength or weapons. It was about resilience, creativity, and the courage to act even when hope seemed impossible. The humans had brought more than protection. They had brought a new way of thinking, a way to endure and rise stronger no matter the danger. And as the humans continued their work, the fragile aliens realized one simple truth. They had been saved, not by luck or chance, but by the unbreakable will of Earth's monsters. The galaxy would never forget the events that followed. The fragile world had survived, not merely through luck or prayer, but through the actions of humans whose reputation, as Deathworlders now spread far and wide, the empire that had once threatened to destroy everything had retreated in shame, forced to rethink their assumptions about power and strength. On the fragile world, life slowly began to rebuild. Cities repaired their structures, farms returned to productivity, and families reunited after months of fear. But this was not merely a return to the old ways. The humans had left their mark. The aliens had learned skills, strategies, and a way of thinking that would remain long after the humans left. They had become capable of defending themselves, of preparing for challenges they never could have imagined before. The humans did not leave immediately. They remained to ensure stability, working alongside the aliens to maintain defenses and train future generations. They shared knowledge about their world, about survival, and about the harsh realities that had shaped them. Every lesson carried a dual message. Strength without compassion could destroy, but compassion without strength could fail. Over time, the fragile aliens came to understand the depth of the humans' actions. The humans had not fought for glory or gain. They had fought because they recognized the value of life, because they knew the importance of protecting those who could not defend themselves. The aliens had expected saviors, but what they received were teachers, warriors, and guides who challenged them to become better, stronger, and braver. The humans' presence changed the planet in more than just practical ways. The fragile people began to see themselves differently. They no longer felt helpless in the face of threats. They had learned courage, endurance, and the meaning of true resilience. Children grew up hearing stories of the humans, not as monsters to fear, but as legends of survival and bravery. Artists painted their ships and warriors, poets wrote of their courage, and musicians composed songs that would echo through generations. Beyond the fragile world, the galaxy also began to take notice. Word of humanity's actions spread quickly. Some civilizations reacted with fear, believing that the Deathworlders might be unpredictable, unstoppable forces. Others were inspired, seeing that even the smallest, weakest civilizations could survive if they had allies willing to fight with unmatched courage and strategy. The fragile aliens themselves finally understood the full impact of the humans' intervention. They had called for help expecting weakness, but they received strength in a form they could hardly comprehend. Humanity had brought more than ships and weapons. They had brought an idea that survival and protection were worth any cost, and that even the most fragile civilizations could endure if guided and supported by those willing to face impossible odds. As the humans prepared to leave the system, the fragile aliens held a ceremony to honor them. It was not lavish, nor was it meant to impress. It was simple, heartfelt, and sincere. Leaders spoke of gratitude and admiration. Children waved and families cheered. But the humans did not respond with arrogance. They accepted the gratitude, quietly, knowing that the real reward was seeing the aliens' growth and survival. Before leaving, the humans gave one final gift. Knowledge, maps, strategies, and lessons in survival were shared, ensuring that even if the humans were gone, the fragile aliens could continue to protect themselves. Every person on the planet understood that they had been changed forever. The humans had taught them not only how to fight, but why survival, resilience, and courage mattered more than anything else. When the human fleet finally departed, the skies were empty once more, but the fragile aliens felt no fear. They had seen the power, determination, and resilience of Earth's monsters. They knew that the humans had not left them alone. Their presence, their teachings, and their example would remain forever. And across the galaxy, the Stow,